It's hard for me to even know where to begin when it comes to reviewing this game. Hyrule Warriors has basically become a franchise of its own from the time of its initial release on the Wii U in 2014 to today, in May of 2018, where it is finally coming to the Nintendo Switch. In this video, I'm going to attempt to lay out all of the information that any kind of watcher will want to have when thinking about purchasing this game. I want to make it clear to the person unfamiliar with this franchise and for those familiar with it, as well as to those who may have bought one or the other versions of this game before, and for those who, like myself, bought both. Hyrule Warriors has had a complex development cycle to say the least. The Wii U version was lauded as a successful merging of the Legend of Zelda and Dynasty Warriors brands, yet it was doomed to be released on a very unsuccessful platform. The follow-up release, Hyrule Warriors Legends, for the much more successful 3DS, included all of the DLC that was released for the Wii U version in the purchase price. However, it too was marred upon its release due to its technical troubles on any 3DS that wasn't the new type, as well as a few noteworthy lazy reviews, which either didn't really play the game, or simply refused to consider how the new improvements included in that version could make it easily a superior version of the original in all ways but graphical clarity.
Hyrule Warriors Legends for 3DS and New 3DS is the portable version of Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U. Here's what we said about that game.
It just feels like there are water Pokemon in nearly every battle.
For all things Zelda, keep it right here at IGN.
It seems to me that because it was released on a weaker platform, it was instantly deemed as the inferior version, even though that was very much not the case. In its lifespan through the two versions of Hyrule Warriors, Koei Tecmo released two separate successful campaigns of DLC for their respective versions, which were both defined by consistent quality and purchase value. And for the players that took the dive on either version of the game, they were justly rewarded with fantastic new playstyles, unique new adventure mode maps, and a slew of new creative costumes and weapons for the massive cast. However, as all things do, this had to come to an end eventually, and it did. Until now. So, what exactly is Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition? Well, let me set this straight right off the bat. This game is a combination of all of the content of Hyrule Warriors and Hyrule Warriors Legends. No more and no less. In reality, this is more like a version of Hyrule Warriors Legends for the Switch, as really the few things that were changed are more like remasterings of the systems which were first introduced in that version. I have been playing this Switch version since day one of its release in Japan, and I have been from one end to the other in it. I have done everything that I did before in the Wii U and 3DS versions and more, meaning that I have likely put upwards of 900 hours into this game throughout all of its releases. If you came here to simply hear about what's different in this version, don't worry because I will be getting to all of that in a bit. However, let me do this thing right and start at the beginning, finally. Okay, so Hyrule Warriors is a spin-off game of the Dynasty Warriors franchise, making it essentially a game in the Warriors series with all of the aesthetics of a Legend of Zelda game. Altogether, it consists of a somewhat lengthy story mode, with the 3 new story additions which were included in other versions, such as the Sia and Linkle stories and the Wind Waker epilogue. After tackling all of the story mode's content once, most of the real gameplay of this game is to be found in the adventure mode, which is a series of challenges laid out on an NES-style Zelda map, with unlockable characters, new weapons, unique costumes, and all manner of other great prizes strewn throughout. Unlocking all of the content in this game, or at least most of the content, on all 9 of the adventure mode maps is really the bulk of the experience here, and to me, it's also the most rewarding part. This game will take you hundreds of hours to even get close to completing, which means that just playing through the story mode once and calling it quits will leave a player hardly familiar with what this game actually is. So, for the people who are only Zelda fans and are watching this video, you might be asking yourself, will I like this game if I've never played a Dynasty Warriors game before? While I can't say for sure if someone like that will like the game, what I can say is that in many ways, Hyrule Warriors is the most accessible Warriors game in the whole franchise. For this game series, it is true that controlling the characters is simple in the way that pulling off all of the attacks that your character can do is never more complicated than hitting 2 buttons in a linear order. However, there is a lot of depth here that is not just in repeatedly hitting the buttons. There's monitoring the battlefield, paying attention to the information given to you, responding to new threats to your allies, etc. Whenever I'm playing a battle in this game, my brain is usually 2 steps ahead of my character. I'm always thinking about what place I want to go to after the place I'm going next. And I think it's this dynamic gameplay and planning, of needing to constantly shift plans on a somewhat organic battlefield, that allows people like myself to play these games on and on and on for an absurd number of hours. In fact, I think it's even easier in this version because of the new features that have been brought along from the Legends release, all in a beautiful 1080p and a constant 60 FPS. So, as for those new features, I should probably explain exactly what they are for anyone who didn't play the Legends release. Sorry if this is old info for those who did. Anyways, included in this version is the ability to bring multiple playable characters to a battle, and to be able to freely switch between them with the press of a button. You can have a maximum of 4 characters in the battles. However, each fight in the game has a limit of the number of characters that you can bring. One thing that I noticed is that there are no adventure mode battles that allow you to bring 4 characters, with the maximum there seeming to be 3. It's only in the story mode where you can have 4 characters at once. As I mentioned before, this game is no more and no less than the previous versions of it, so logical upgrades to the system, which have been seen in this game's very own spiritual sequel of Fire Emblem Warriors, are unfortunately absent. This means that, for example, the other characters that you bring will not gain any experience unless you are actively controlling them. And, just as in Legends, although you can order your characters to go to specific points on the map, they will really not be able to do much without you directly controlling them. You can bring a level 100 Ganondorf to an early game mission, and order him around from the sidelines all you want, but unless you're directly in control of him, he'll really do very little except move from place to place. On top of the character switching, the other big new system from Legends that's in this game is the My Ferry System. It's a little bit hard to explain this kind of bizarre system from the outside, but in a nutshell, I guess I can describe it as such. Starting in the first adventure mode map, you're able to find Ferry Companions as well as food and themed clothing for them throughout the various battles. From then on, you can choose to bring one of the Ferry Companions for each of your individual characters to the battles. Gameplay-wise, they function to allow your character a new explosive fairy magic attack that affects a very large area around you, which is great for netting tons of easy KOs and helping you to reach your A-rank KO goals. However, this also leaves a lingering elemental effect on the affected blast area, which is based on what element of attack your fairy has gained, which itself is based on the kind of food that you fed your fairy. The light element effect creates a healing over time zone for all of your allies in the area, and the fire element effect reduces the defenses of all enemies in the area. The water element effect ups the defenses of all of your allies in the area, while the lightning element effect slows the marching speed of all your enemies in the area. Finally, the darkness element effect creates a damage over time zone for the enemies that are within the initial blast area. By the way, for my money, the fire effect is definitely the most useful, as it allows you to defeat boss characters much faster and chew through some tough enemy health bars with ease. The fairy clothes that you can put onto your fairies help to give various bonuses to them, such as increasing the damage of their blast effect or lowering the amount of magic you need to gather before you can start using the fairy blast attack. Also, as you can tell from the footage on screen, in this version of the game, the 2D sprites from the Legends version have been replaced with these beautiful 3D models, which also goes for all of the clothes that you can collect for the fairies, even though some of them are still rather 2D. Now, I haven't even gotten into the most complicated bit about the fairies, like the fairy skills that you can obtain and equip up to 4 of by feeding your fairies certain foods to raise different personality traits, but given how complicated that all is, I'll have to address that in a later video. I'm trying to keep things simple here. The last of these big Legends changes are the 2 new levels of weapons in this game. These include the level 4 weapons, which have a significant power increase from the level 3 weapons, but otherwise look identical to them, and the level 4 plus weapons, which have the same model as the level 3 weapon again, but are given a radical color change based on an additional element that has been added to that weapon. For example, the Power Glove here gains the fire element on top of the electricity that it starts with in the level 4 plus version, and thus it takes on this burning red shade. So, speaking of the elements, nothing has been changed about how the elemental attack and elemental weakness system works in this game. And speaking of that latter one, it's still not really explained how elemental weaknesses work. So, in the middle of this review, I consider it my civic duty to inform everyone watching exactly how these work. So, all characters that you fight against, except for the bosses, do have an elemental weakness that is specific to them and will increase the amount of damage that you do to them significantly. However, your controlled character takes the same amount of damage regardless of your enemy's elemental attacks, and that damage can only be reduced by increasing your level or buying new elemental defense badges for that character. This means that you never have to worry about facing up against your weakness. Rather, the elemental weakness system can only ever benefit you. However, it seems that they still only want you to learn this by trial and error. Thankfully, people much smarter than me have corrected me in the past when I was wrong about this, and have graciously listed the results of their testing, which I'm now going to lay out for everybody watching. The following characters are weak to light weapons: the mini-imprisoned enemy, Ganondorf, Midna, Zant, Girahim, Sia, Wizro, Twilight Midna, Skull Kid, Ravio, and Yuga. The following characters are weak to fire: Gibdo, Moblin, Stallmaster, Icy Big Poe, Agatha, and Tingle. These following characters are weak to lightning: Errolfos, Darknut, Dynalfos, Shield Moblin, Big Blin, Lana, Ruto, and Marin. The following characters are weak to water: Fiery Errolfos, Re-Dead Knight, Lizalfos, Big Poe, Stoneblin, Goron Captain, Darunia, and Volga. And finally, the following characters are weak to darkness: Hylian Captain, Link, Impa, Sheik, Zelda, Fi, Young Link, Linkle, Toon Link, Tetra, King Daphnes, Medley, and Toon Zelda. Well, that's certainly a pace breaker, but I do think it's rather important information. Anyway, back to the review. With the multi-character switching, the My Ferry system, and the level 4 and 4 plus weapons out of the way, the rest of the new content from Legends that never made it into the Wii U version only consists of the new adventure mode maps, which, as I said before, in total is the majority of this game's experience. Every single map, of which there are 9, not including the rewards map, which is unlocked by Skulltula hunting, is unlocked for play from the start. However, they are now given a clear difficulty rating to distinctly separate them. Unfortunately, there are still no average level ratings associated with the maps or the battles within them, just a vague colored system that disappears forever as soon as you unlock the first square of it in the maps. This can be very confusing overall, as some of the characters, such as Ravio and Yuga, who are unlocked on the final map, seem to be completely unavailable until you get super deep into the game. However, this actually isn't true. In reality, the green sections of all of these maps, even the ones with a high difficulty rating, are totally accessible to anyone who has a character around maybe level 30, and at least the initial power Master Sword. This was when I first went for these characters, and found that it was actually pretty easy to get them, even though the rest of the parts of the map may require characters in the high level 60s or 70s. However, the same cannot be said about those additional characters level 2, 3, 4, and 4 plus weapons. For the characters who are unlocked on these later maps, getting all of those weapons is something that you will have to wait for. However, this has a bigger effect than you might expect, because this completely changed the way that a certain weapon is balanced. The power of the Master Sword has always had a lopsiding effect on this game's balance, because it gives you a weightedly better choice than using much of the rest of the cast of the game. The Master Sword starts at a decently high damage rating. However, it's able to increase even higher through 2 unlockable skills, which are barred to you until you have finally gotten every other character's level 3 weapon for the first skill, and then every other character's level 4 and 4 plus weapons. In the Legends version of the game, this didn't include the characters who were later released by DLC, meaning that you could have the full 900 power rating Master Sword before even stepping into the first DLC map. Naturally, the path of least resistance is a powerful force, and I imagine that many Legends players often took the Master Sword into battle a little bit more often than they should have. I'm not judging because I did it myself, and it was a lot better than having to struggle unnecessarily with a weaker character. However, in a way, this kind of poisons the experience. In Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, you must now have every single level 3 weapon for every character, including the ones who were previously DLC only, such as Toon Zelda and Marin and Yuga. In practice, this means that while the Master Sword still starts out strong, as you're unlocking other characters level 3 and then level 4 and 4+ weapons, it quickly lowers in value as the rest of your cast is getting weapons with space for skill builds, meaning that until the faraway time of finally getting an upgrade for the Master Sword comes, you will likely find a lot more use out of the rest of the cast. For me, rather than Link and his stupid sword, Sheik became my warrior of choice. And if you're interested, I actually think that her level 4+ weapon is the easiest and fastest one to obtain in the game. It's on the Koholint Island map, really not that far away from where you start out. It's not super easy to obtain with a low-level character, but I myself was able to grab it with a level 40 Sheik and a rank 2 weapon. Later on, even after unlocking the first and second skills on the Master Sword, by that time I already had a lot of great weapons for the rest of my cast with very, very powerful builds, meaning that I had lost the incentive to keep on unnecessarily relying on it. That might have been an unintended balance change, but it was one that I really appreciated. So with the main gameplay system and parts explained, the only thing left to do here would be to address some common questions about the game that I know that I'm going to receive from many people. I know that a very small amount of you actually look in the description or read the comments, considering that I still get people asking me the same questions over and over and over again 2 years later on my Legends review. So I hope that this part of the video will still be relevant long after launch. Anyways, here's all the information that I think you could possibly want about this game that wasn't included in other parts of the review. Yes, this game really runs at a stable 1080p 60 FPS. I know I mentioned this earlier in the video before, and if you have your settings turned up on YouTube, you've been watching that level of footage all along, but still, I thought I'd definitively say it. However, in handheld mode, the game does lower in frame rate a bit. Next up, yes, the 2-player mode of this game is split screen on one TV. In my opinion, the frame rate is still consistent, although I wasn't able to measure whether it was 60 or 30 FPS, but it definitely doesn't feel like a frame drop. There are less enemies on the screen, however, this might be a 20 to 25% reduction at most. Oh, and there is no wireless co-op. Couch co-op only, everyone. I did experience some bugs during my playtime. However, all of them seem to be linked to keeping the game on for excessively long periods of time. I still experienced some crashes after the Japanese version was patched once, and I do hope that these will be ironed out in time for the English release. However, if not, I highly recommend simply closing the application on your Switch from time to time when you're between battles after long sessions. For me, I started to feel that if I had the game on for maybe 8 hours or more, I'd be asking for a crash. Oh, and one extra thing, if you start to see any visual errors in the maps, it means that you are not far off from a crash. Restart as soon as possible. Oh, and no, these crashes were not a big problem overall, it's just something that you're bound to experience when you play the game 250 hours in 1 month like me. Next up, yes, the My Fairies do now appear on screen during their magic attack, and because of this, it does take slightly longer to perform the Fairy Blast attack than it did in the Legends version. Timing it all out, however, it's more like a 3-second animation, and I never in my full playtime found this to be a chore to watch. Actually, I really like the fact that you can now see your fairies and how you dress them up in a relevant context, and not just in some buried menu and after certain fights. Yes, this version of the game still has Amiibo support. However, there are no exclusive items unlocked by it. The limit is still 5 scans a day, and doing this will get you either some materials, a random weapon drop, or rupees for non-Zelda series amiibos, or the specific weapons for the character that you scan if you use a Zelda series amiibo. If that character has multiple weapons like Link, you'll just get a random weapon for one of his types. Games Brain pro tip, by the way, unlock high-level weapons for characters whose amiibos you own as soon as possible, and then use them to farm high-level weapons for selling in the shop, netting you a good amount of rupees each day. Speaking of the weapons, the 8-bit weapons have returned from the Wii U version. However, they can only be used in the Definitive Edition by activating a skin swap setting for the level 4+ weapons that is located in the main menu. You can't change this mid-battle, and I should mention that there are no new 8-bit weapons. However, there are new level 4+ weapons that were never available in any version of the game. These consist of Medley's level 4+ harp, which now adds the water element, Marin's level 4+ bell, which now adds light, Linkle's level 4+ boots, which also add light, Toon Zelda's level 4+ sword, which adds fire, Toon Link's level 4+ sand wand, which adds darkness, Ravio's level 4+ hammer, which adds electricity, and Yuga's level 4+ frame, which adds fire. Oh, and there are also no new character materials in this game. People like Yuga still drop Ganondorf materials when you face them in battle, and etc. There is an item card shop now for the adventure mode maps, and although it is pricey to keep buying item cards at 5, 10, or 20,000 rupees a pop, it is so worth it to keep yourself from having to grind out lots of item cards in the longer maps, like the Hyrule Field and its Master Quest version. All of the characters involved in the story mode are now unlocked from the start, specifically after you have finished the first story mode mission. This means that you will have Link's sword, Impa's blade, Sheik, Lana's tome, Zelda's rapier, Ganondorf's swords, Darunia, Ruto, Agatha, Midna, Zant, Fi, Girahim, Sia, Volga, Wizro, and Linkle right off the bat. This means that 15 minutes into the game, you'll have 16 of the 42 playstyles already unlocked. Speaking of playstyles, I should tell you that there are no gameplay tweaks to any of the playstyles whatsoever. Everything that I said in my guide series is still true, so if you're having trouble with anyone, be sure to check out my All About Hyrule Warriors videos. The Ganon's Fury mode is also unlocked and available at the same time as all of the other initial characters. And for those Legends-only players, you should know that this was not included in the 3DS version. Here's your second Games Brain pro tip, and it's that I want to stress that although the mode is extremely repetitive, I recommend doing the Ganon's Fury stuff as soon as possible. All of the rupees and materials that drop while you're playing him will carry over to your main game, meaning this is a great way to get tons of money and essential boss materials very early on into the game. You should probably take it slow and go back to the main game to keep from going crazy, because a lot of the Ganon battles are very long and tiring, especially for your thumbs. Still, it does make upgrading your character's defenses a lot easier with all of the boss materials that will drop over and over again. Oh, and the Giant Gecko is still in the game. However, through my play, I discovered that the requirements for unlocking him are changed from the Wii U version. In that version, he was unlocked by getting the top rank in Survival Battle 3. However, here, I wasn't able to get him until I actually beat Survival Battle 4 with a top rank, which required a nearly level 100 Beast Ganon. I should probably mention that Survival Battle 4 was also the last mission that I did, so it is possible that you might have to do every battle, but I think it's just the Survival Battle 4 one. Your reward for doing all this is one of the least rewarding unlocks in the game. Have fun if it's your bag, I guess. I mentioned the amount of hours I played this game at various points in this review, but let me be more specific. It took me about 225 hours to collect every weapon in the game. Once you have every weapon, things go much faster, and at 250 hours, I had finished collecting every last costume, My Fairy item, and replaying story mode on hard again. I'm still a ways away from getting every single Skulltula and heart piece / container in the game, and the speed that I went might be faster than others due to my experience with this game, but still, I thought I would state it all just so everyone can know what they'll be getting into. Just a couple ones left here. The infamous Rupee Glitch from the Wii U version, where you could kill a boss in a certain way with a certain skill on your weapon and get a massive amount of money instantly, is not in this version. That has been fixed just as it was in Legends. The Ocarina as an item is back, which allows you to warp around the battlefields by activating owl statues that are strewn throughout them. Just like in Legends, however, there aren't always these owl statues on the maps, and only certain battles will have them. The music selector for your battles is back in the game, having been left out of the 3DS version. Also, the alternate stage skins, like Hyrule Field at Twilight from the Linkle story, is in this version. Well, that does it for all of the questions that I could think of or gather from my community, and although I hope it addressed everyone's questions, it probably didn't. But I think it's time to finally end this thing. To put it in a nutshell, it's really hard for me to not keep saying this, but this is truly the definitive version of this game. It's kind of the hot ticket right now to remaster old Wii U games and put them on the Switch, but I don't think any of them deserve it more than Hyrule Warriors. It basically has everything that a new and old player could possibly want. You have all of the great new story content that was introduced, all of the improvements from Legends, with now its great new cosmetics and fairy stuff in full HD. You have all of the adventure mode maps with their unique mechanics made much better through the item shop. And you have the same great gameplay that defined this game in the first place. While I would have really appreciated seeing some tweaks to this game, especially some of the things that were fixed in Fire Emblem Warriors, such as team member AI and allowing non-controlled characters to gain XP, at the end of the day, this is still the best version of a game that I passionately love. And somehow it's a game that I can still put another 300 hours into and not come away bored. Both previous versions of Hyrule Warriors were excellent. They weren't perfect, but they were great games. This version is literally the best version of both of them that has ever existed, and probably will exist. Of course, I recommend it extremely highly to both new and old players of the series or this very game. I'm sure that, like me, many people will find their own reasons to keep on playing. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please like, comment below, and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out my second channel, GamesBrain Plays, for group and solo Let's Play content. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Until next time, this has been GamesBrained, and I hope you take care.